evening and welcome to DJN TV on Monday night. That's right, it's Monday. That means it's time for us to put down the football and talk to the one and only Bill Hermann. Good evening, Bill.
Well, okay, I'll put down the football, but I'm gonna pick up a little something here.
Yes, this is sparkling.
John told me this is be like the Graham Norton show, so
yes, sparkling spring water is
sparkling whiskey.
What he has
Kentucky
for
bourbon,
tonight.
Basil Hayden.
And for those of you who are wondering why Bill has to resort to the hardened water, it's
because you do know that every Monday since the pandemic began, I've had a happy hour.
You have had a happy hour.
Happy hour that I've invited anyone who likes to be a part of it. It's a Zoom happy hour. It's happened. We have not missed a Monday, including this evening, where we all get together, and if we'd like, we raise a glass. If it's nice outside, I sit outside and have a cigar.
And I've seen that.
We talk about everything not DJ related, because that's what you'd do if you met up for happy hour on a Monday with your buddies. So we've been doing that. So this is to all of them and to you, as I could pretend that this is a theater whiskey and it's really only iced tea, but
yes, it is only iced tea. It is only okay. For those of you watching out on Facebook, we had a little bit of problem with Restream getting fired up properly. So first, and then it worked. It seems that it was working. Live show. Boom. And then we'll have to fix it. All right. So this is our industry spotlight session of the night. And tonight, of course, we're going to be focusing on Bill Hermann, because we're going to find out where Bill started and what.
Wait, hold on. I thought I was the one interviewing you tonight.
No. Sorry.
You said we're going to do a thing.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll do it as long as I can. I don't necessarily want it to be about me. Let me just interview you. So you lied to me.
I'm going to find my Bill Hermann sock puppet. He's much more agreeable to work with. Where is it? Where is it?
Actually, I'd like to see that.
It'd be a pretty good show.
And I'm a little disturbed that you would have one.
And what's the sad part about it is every time I've had a conversation with the Bill Hermann sock puppet, both of us end up crying. It's just a tough.
It's not a whole lot different than when you and I talk.
Pretty much. Yeah, when we get together, it ends up being that way. But that's another story for another show. So thank you guys for being with us and finding us out there on YouTube and Facebook this evening. People are starting to kind of wander on in and be there. Don wants to go grab another beer. That's the way to do it, Don. Be a team member.
Well, if you're not drinking during this interview, then you're not going to learn a thing.
Yeah, it'll get better with. So, Bill, let's
more entertaining the more you drink.
Let's back up in the Bill Hermann world, and when in those early days, as a youngster, now I want to go way back into those. When did you start to notice that music was kind of a cool thing, and you were like, "Hey, I kind of dig this music scene thing"?
I was 12, and my parents had a big 4.5 foot long, 4 foot tall, 2.5 foot, 3 feet deep stereo console, made out of oak, right? It had a radio, it had a turntable, and my parents had their records, and their records were things like Montavani. There were things like, I think my dad had a Creedence Clearwater Revival greatest hits record. Jesus Christ Superstar and Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Helen Reddy's greatest hits and 3 of her records. And when I figured out how to use that stuff, I fell into what this was. Even radio was not that wasn't really something that I really understood at the time, even though not long after my father, who knew the local grocery store owner in Beulah, Michigan, who had invested in an FCC license for WBNZ in Frankfort, Michigan, brought this radio station up, and he went, well, bring your kid out. Maybe we can find a job for him sweeping floors. And that's kind of when I realized that that the music world and recorded music and playing music for people outside of your family was really a thing. I knew I heard music on the radio. I listened to John Records Landecker on WLS in Chicago, up in northern Michigan, late at night. That
AM
radio station upped its wattage to 100,000 watts and bounced off the atmosphere. And in that little town of 2,000 people, I would, when the sun went down, sometimes, when I knew my parents were asleep at midnight, I would tune in to listen to the Boogie Check and WLS and stay up all night. And so listening to music was that thing. It didn't seem like a thing that you could be a part of until radio. And radio was a thing that really, he didn't really teach me music.
Mm-hmm.
He taught me radio. He taught me interviewing. He taught me editing. And no reason he should have, because I was 12. My dad drove up this huge hill, the highest, tallest hill in Frankfort, Michigan. And on the top of the hill was this transmitter and this trailer. It was just a trailer, a big, huge trailer on blocks next to this transmitter, and on a big gravel parking area. And he pulled his big yellow station wagon in there, and he says, "Hey, why don't you go in there and see if you can get yourself a job?" And cocky little Billy at 12 years old walked across that parking lot, stepped up on those metal stairs, almost kicked open the door, hardly even said anything to the lady who was the receptionist as I walked past her and into the first open office that was, surprisingly enough, the general manager's office, Mike Bradford. And I waved, and he said, who are you? And I said, "I'm Billy Hermann." And I sat down and all but put my legs up on the table in front of him and said, "You should hire me to work at your radio station." And he didn't call out and say, "Edna, how'd this guy get in here?" He went, "Okay, so why should I hire you?" And started talking to me and asking me questions. And I was a little spastic kid that was just really excited about, being a star and being on radio and talking about WLS because that was the station that I thought was where the biggest stars in the world were.
Sure.
When it was all done, I was all done just kind of, running at the mouth. And my old man used to say, running like a whippoorwill's A.
I've heard that one before, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. He kind of paused. He smiled. He leaned back in his chair. He nodded for a second, came up on his chair, and he opened up this big drawer in the bottom of his big steel office desk and pulled out a tape recorder about that big. It was a professional quality tape recorder. He gave me 2 big 90-minute cassettes and a microphone with a way to plug it in. And he says, "Okay, so go to school, interview people that you think might be newsworthy." He didn't even explain newsworthy to me.
What it meant, yes. He just, here you go.
Right. My old man knew somebody at the local newspaper and got a. I think I still have it. I should probably find it someday and share it with everybody. But it's the Associated Press's a booklet on how to write AP stories.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's a format to it.
Mm-hmm.
And my old man showed up with that later. But I just went to school then, and I interviewed my buddies. I interviewed anybody that would talk to me, right? My school teachers and the coach who was like, "Who the hell are you?" I wasn't even into sports. I was the nerd that got beat up every day. So it's like the coach was like irritated with me being around. I brought that thing back. I filled up 2 90-minute cassettes, front and back. Gave it to the guy, and he says, "Okay, come on in here." And he brought me into the production studio, and he showed me how to transfer all that stuff to a big reel-to-reel tape. He showed me how to edit, and he says, "Okay, so you work on this for as long as it takes to get it down to about 5 minutes. And you come and get me." And that took me about 3 weeks. Because it was, they needed the studio. I would only be up there for a little while. And when I finally did that, he showed me how to record an introduction and an outro, an intro and outro, and to put it together, and gave it to the morning show. And it was a little 3-minute show called Billy Hermann's School News and Report. And he paid me $5 because it ran that Wednesday. And he says, "Okay, here's your $5. Now do the same thing for next Wednesday." And I did that every Wednesday. And that was my introduction to radio and professional music, DJ, radio, all of that stuff. In fact, I found out the other day, not the other day, but maybe about a year ago, last time I was home, that not only Mike Bradford, who gave me that first break, is gone now, but that WBNZ in Frankfort, Michigan is still on the air and still does every Wednesday School News and Report with a young school kid every single week, and has been doing that since 1970. Now I'm really dating myself. Since 2014 when I started.
Yeah, exactly. So you started and you were doing the report side, and there's two facets I really want to hit. The DJ side of it, when you started to get into that. But when did the acting bug bite?
Oh, that was earlier. I was 5.
Oh my.
6. I was in elementary school, and I just loved being up in front of people. I was a show-off. I was a kid that sang loudest at church. I was the one who did imitations of things I saw on TV, or I hate to say it, but I was a huge Bill Cosby fan, and I had memorized every routine that he did on the album "Why Is There Air," and would repeat it to everyone who was around me. And my first play, I was in school, and I was in the play Winnie the Pooh, and I was rabbit number 3. Right, I had one line.
I didn't know
at the end of the first act, and it wasn't very interesting, and it wasn't very fun. And I was supposed to be having a tussle with one of the other small actors at the end of this scene, and we're supposed to be fighting over something, and it wasn't fun, and nobody was reacting to it. It just seemed like it honestly was just a transition into the next scene. I didn't understand it at the time. It's just everybody else was getting applause and laughter and things like that. So I told my scene partner, whose name I cannot remember, I feel badly that I don't remember, that on the day of the opening night, I says, when we're having the big fight, and I start to win, I want you to pretend to knee me in the crotch, and I will scream and double over in pain and lay on the floor and go, ah! And I did that, right? I did that, and it got a huge laugh, and I'm rolling around, and the lights go down, and I get off, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. Look at me, I'm a star. I can't get enough of this. Of course, I got bawled out by the director, and it was just a teacher, right? But she was so mad at me. It's like, how dare you do something like that? That was terrible. But you couldn't have convinced me. I wasn't in trouble. Yeah, I was in trouble, but I couldn't have convinced you. Couldn't convince me. So I knew at that day, that I was an actor. I knew that I was going to be an actor for the rest of my life. That's what I was, who I was, what I was going to do. You couldn't have convinced me of anything else. All through grade school, all through middle school, all through high school. Even when I went into radio school later on, I'm an actor, and that's who I am at my core, even today. At the ripe age of 28.
Yeah, I think it was 20. You might have celebrated your 29th birthday recently. I don't remember.
28.
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. So you had the acting bug. You knew that there was basically a stage with your name on it that you wanted to be on.
Yeah.
How did that radio when you were? I mean, was the Wednesday thing? Did that feed that for you at that time, or was it one of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that I had to learn everything about the entertainment business as I could, because I could see that the entertainment business was a huge thing. It wasn't just standing on a stage and getting a part to play. I could see early on that there's people on television, there's people in radio, there's people in films, there's people on stage. Any time that you could stand in front of an audience and get attention, and a lot of that early on I was feeding this ADHD and this idea that I needed attention. So it was attention driven early. And it was easier for me to kind of drag myself into that attention because I could say, well, I'm an actor. Mm-hmm. I'm not just a spaz, which is really what I was. I was a kid, I was that kid in high school. I got beat up and bullied pretty much, My entire school.
Cheerleaders can be mean. I'm just going to say it.
Cheerleaders, they are
Yeah,
mean,
mean.
especially when you show up in the outfit and you say, I really got my pom-poms.
Yeah, and they're like,
nice.
Come here, we're going to thump on you now.
But I wasn't well liked because I was a spastic attention, excuse the word, but kind of an attention whore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I liked the attention. It fed the idea, and the idea that I was going to get attention only when I was in a play, that was not enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's radio,
Sure.
and there was a community theater in town. I tried out for that. I was the first kid that ever got cast in a community theater play. The local paper in Frankfurt called the Record Patriot. I decided I wanted to. There was nothing I needed to do is write. So I went up there and I said, I'm a writer. And they went, okay, write. So I said, well, do you want me to? Well, write stuff about your school. So I decided to be, it looked like everybody who wanted to know about the sports. And once again,
yeah,
I'm an actor. I know. And I've been okay with it for at least the last 10 years of my life. I know nothing about sports. Okay. But I was, the stuff they wanted me to talk about was the high school sports, the basketball players, the coaches, the wins, the losses, and then things like, you know, maybe a student had got into the honor club or someone had got a big scholarship. So my first article for the Record Patriot, I got a byline. There were guys getting out of high school or getting out of college rather that wouldn't get a byline here. But for some reason, I have a byline written by Bill Hermann. So I'm writing a weekly article now as well. It's just, I knew that if I wanted to do this, I couldn't just depend on other people. And part of that was my old man, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to be an actor, you're going to have 2 or 3 other jobs that pay you.
Yep.
You know, because this ain't going to pay you. Plus, you know, you can't just, if you're just going to read other people's words, that's great, but you could write your own words. You know, you could direct shows, you could learn how to do other things. He didn't know anything about it. My father, nurse anesthetist, he worked in hospital administration and nursing. My mother was a homemaker, you know. They did their best to try to support me, but they didn't know any idea but what I was into and why I was into it. They were most of the time like, oh dear God, Billy's doing something else. So, but I was in. I mean, there was even a point at one point when I was a freshman in high school that the idea of the clergy rustled through my brain, and I went to the seminary for a year in Wisconsin, and an all boys a Capuchin seminary for the priesthood. And when I look back at it, I think the thing that attracted me the most, not only was it because Catholicism had been in my life the entire time, but also the priest is on stage. He's got all the attention. You know, so I hate to mention that and say it out loud, but the truth is that was part of it.
Yeah.
Now, I was only there for a year, and when I came home for that summer after after freshman year, I met a girl, and that girl, you know, treated me to some things that I probably wasn't going to find going back to that all boys school. And as much as the Capuchins didn't like the idea that was the deciding reason why I didn't go back, I think that was a good idea.
Yeah,
so.
That's funny. Let's keep going. So you were doing reporting, you were doing some writing things. When did you transition into getting into the DJ side of where you were actually starting to play music and maybe even getting to the point of doing music for dances and such?
That was not long after I got that first radio job when I was still 12. The morning radio DJ at that radio station in WBNZ was Dusty Weatherford. Dusty Weatherford, sadly, is no longer with us. He passed away about 10 years ago. And he DJ'd local bars in Beulah for years, right up until he was gone. But at the time, he had a rig. And I heard he was DJing like dances. And it was early on, and when you're 12, it's the first time you're hearing about the fact that there are dances.
Yes.
And the idea of dances at first was like, oh, dances, girls can't dance. Oh, ew, and, you know, the jocks beat me up. I don't know if I want to do that. But the idea that I could go down there with Dusty Weatherford, who for some reason allowed me to come with him, showed me how to hook up speakers and put the rig together and set things up and be his kind of gopher.
Sure.
And all of these, and the dances he did was the high school, the junior high, a lot of church dances, and community center things. Not a whole lot. I mean, it was a small town, and in the late '70s, it really wasn't that a thing, in a small town in northern Michigan. He was probably one of maybe two other people.
Yeah.
At a DJ rig. He was probably also doing bars, but he was allowing me to be a part of it. He allowed me to see it and to work around him, and I learned the idea of what it was, at least what he defined as what it was, as a part-time guy anyway, because he was the morning guy at the radio station, probably making more money. I'm sure he was making more money DJing parties as a supplement, right? But that's when I was introduced to what that could be. And then as I got older, when I moved away to my senior year, I moved, my dad got a job as a hospital administrator because he had taken a management course, or not course, he went back to school and got a degree in hospital management as well, and moved up to the Upper Peninsula in a town called Munising. That was my whole school year was someplace else, Benzie Central High School, and then senior year was at Munising High School. And the first thing I did when we moved there was a radio station in town, and I walked in there, with experience.
Right.
I said, "Hey, man, I've been working, and I'd love to be able to work here, and I'm new from town." So they hired me full time right away, the DJ the evening shift, which was just a sunrise to sundown radio station. So depending on the part of the year, I was on live until 10:30 at night, or I was off the air by 6.
Yeah.
And I'd start at 4. But that that was like a way to kind of keep myself in it while I still tried out for plays at the high school and the community theater. And but yeah, even the summer before that, I got my first professional acting job in Traverse City, Michigan, which was from Beulah, about 40 minutes north of Beulah. And Traverse City had a place called the Cherry County Playhouse, which was owned by, at the time, a big star from Laugh-In, whose name for some reason is escaping right now. Pat Paulson.
Yes.
Pat Paulson, an actor who he made his bones on a show called Laugh-In. And the thing that got him really famous is that every year or every couple of years he would run for president.
And very dry sense of humor.
He was like a hang dog look on his face. And he got really famous, and he opened this little summer stock theater, professional summer stock theater that brought in B-list celebrities. And I got a job as an apprentice and an actor for the children's theater for that summer before my senior year. And then I got my real taste of, because I was the only high school kid that got hired for this apprentice program. The rest of them were college MFA, Masters of Fine Arts acting students from all over the country. So that was a great, wonderful experience where I met a lot of professional actors, a lot of celebrities like, anybody probably knows anymore, but people like Gene Rayburn, who was the host of the Match Game back in the 70s and 80s. And Neil Simon, the playwright, came into town because he had written a new play called You Ought to Be in Pictures. And he was trying it out for the first time there. So I got to meet him. I got to meet Ava Gabor, who was from Green Acres, right?
Yeah.
Pat Hingle, which was he's an actor who's a big character actor. He's no longer with us, but he was a big character actor in the 60s and 70s and the 80s and 90s. Most people remember him from being the hanging judge in Hang 'em High with Clint Eastwood, or as Commissioner Gordon in the first Batman movie that had Jack Nicholson in it. And he was in a play, and I was his dresser for the play, so I spent a lot of time with him. So that was an experience of reminding me that this could be a real thing, even though my dad was like, "Yeah, it's nice and all, you really ought to learn math, kid," And I held back from that crap for as long as I could. But yeah, I mean, I was very lucky that and looking back, as much as I didn't think my parents really understood me. They really supported me.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they moved up to Munising, I lived in Traverse City as a 15-year-old, going on 16-year-old, with a person in town that had an extra room. So I could be at this theater, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, learning lighting, learning staging, learning stagecraft, understanding how to do repertory theater, and learning lines to be able to do. I think we did 6 different children's shows that entire summer. So every Saturday and Sunday we had a kids show that we did that I would be in or whatever. Plus I was working backstage as a prop master or a lighting technician or a dresser, or just as a backstage gopher for all of the professional shows. So that was a huge experience.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it was. So when did you get into the point then that you moved or added consistent DJ work, mobile DJ work to your life? I mean, you were busy with the acting side of it and doing some things on it with the radio stations. When did that come in?
Well, when I graduated high school, my old man wanted me to go to college. I had no intention. I didn't like school. I didn't enjoy school. I got beat up in school. I didn't want more of school. But his insistence and our conversations, he talked about radio school. And at the time, there were 2 radio schools that we looked at. One was in Detroit, and it was called Specs Howard. And one was in Minneapolis. It was called Brown Institute. And both of them the idea of learning radio, professional radio, going to a school to learn more about radio, which is something I'd been doing for 3 years already, sounded not that difficult, plus something that I was interested in. And if I was interested, I would work really hard at.
Certainly.
So, and Brown Institute in Minneapolis seemed less scary than Specs Howard in Detroit, Michigan. So I chose Minneapolis. Brown Institute, came to Minneapolis, where, and I live in a suburb of Minneapolis now. Went to Brown Institute. It was a 9-month program for about $10,000 to find out that they were teaching you everything you kind of learned on the job for the first year you ever worked in radio, which is not a big deal. But during that time, I also had to work because I had an apartment with 3 guys. I had to have rent and stuff like that. So while I was delivering pizzas for Domino's, which I made really pretty good money at, I found out that there was a roller rink in that I knew there were roller rinks, but I didn't even give the idea that you had DJs at roller rinks until I heard about that you could do that. And there's a roller rink in St. Louis Park that's closing down this year, but it's called the Roller Garden. And I went there and I applied and told them that I could DJ, even though I'd never DJ'd a roller rink in my life. I didn't know how to skate. I lied about all that stuff. They took me on anyway. They laughed at me when they found out I couldn't skate, but they kept me there because I was just enthusiastic enough to stick. And there was a guy there working named Howard Wallstein, who at that roller skating rink was a star. I mean, people came from everywhere to come see Howard Wallstein's DJ at this roller skating rink, and I watched him, and then I found out that he DJ'd parties, and he DJ'd a lot of parties with his company called Total Entertainment. So when I wasn't DJing there, I was up there anyway when he was there, begging him to let me go with him and DJ those parties too. And he ignored me for about, I don't know, 3 to 5 months before he finally, I think he allowed me to do it once because somebody he had as an assistant and setup guy blew him off. So he was like, all right, fine, kid, come on.
Come on and move.
So he takes me on a gig. I set up, I tear down, I'm pretty much, I'm like that little dog in the cartoons, like, oh, George, hey, can I, George? Oh, please, George, can I? I'm completely annoying. I can't believe he wanted me around him at all. And then not only that, but I'm like, let me DJ. I can DJ. I know how to DJ, man. I can do this. I did it at roller rink. I'm good at this. Something like blah, 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 blah. And he tells this story that I don't necessarily completely remember, but he knows exactly the the junior high school party we were at, he and I was running lights. He was DJing the party. We're about to begin. He opens the mic and his voice went up. I think the story is he gave me a chance.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time he was like, I can't speak. I don't know what I can do. You have to do this. So he handed me the microphone. And he gave me the turntables, and I went nuts. And from that day, he was booking me for everything.
Sure.
And I still had my own rig, thinking, I was still promoting that I could do it on my own, and I wasn't really booking any gigs for myself, even though I had my own stuff. But he really taught me the ropes, the serious ropes of DJing parties, and it was high schools and junior highs and elementary schools and bar mitzvahs.
Yes.
And I got really good at being the guy who can fix the problems. So he'd have a really upset bar mitzvah mom, and he knew that he would have to deal with the bar mitzvah mom when he got there. So who got that gig? Give it to Bill, because I could show up, and even though the lady might be freaking out, by the time I started, she was like, oh, okay, he's at least, he's pretty good. So I learned the hard way how to fix problems and deal with problem customers, really difficult ones, by not only making promises of what I could deliver, but then actually delivering on things that he really had no intention or want to deliver on, because these people are being unreasonable. And I'm like, unreasonable? Come on, I can do that for him. So I learned the hard way, but it was because of Howard, who allowed me to do that stuff. And then when I moved away again, I started doing my own thing, started my own little company in Detroit, and it was okay. And I moved around kind of doing radio again, and I kind of gypsied around doing radio and some theater, and I did some stuff on the East Coast. But there was a point where I decided that I wanted to just no longer be a gypsy.
Sure.
And I mean gypsy because I never really stayed any place more than about a year and a half tops. And I would, regardless of how well I was doing, I'd just pull up stakes, grab all my stuff, throw it in a truck, and find a place and start again, which was a good experience and a good way to learn things on its own. When I moved back to Minneapolis, it was about 1989. And I came back because I had a job waiting for me to manage a DJ company while I was still trying to, build my own. But in the time that it took me to pack up my things in Detroit in my small Toyota truck, everything I owned, and drive the 12, 15 hours from Detroit to Minneapolis, that job evaporated. And when I showed up, I had nothing. So I lived in my truck for a couple of weeks while I went to every apartment building I could to try to apply for an apartment. And I went to every bar I could find to try to find a DJ job, as well as any place that might hire me doing, even delivering pizzas or something. And about the same time that I lied my way into an apartment, which was, you got a job? Sure I do. You got, how much money you make? I make this much money.
Lots of money.
No, I just lied my way into them saying, okay, you can move in, which was a little tiny studio apartment with a mattress on the floor. I everything but being homeless, really. I had heat and a mattress, and I had macaroni and cheese. This bar in downtown Minneapolis, who I thought I'd be really good at, which played 50s and 60s music. They told me that, no, we've got 6 guys and they're really, really good. And they've been here since we opened and we're never going to get rid of them. And so I had applied for everybody. And about 2-3 days after, and it was around Christmas time. It was around this time, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. They had a big Christmas party at that bar where everybody got really, really, really drunk. And just about the time that every staff member, including the DJs, were just hammered, the owner showed up. And then everybody was just awful to the owner. And the people who had started it all the DJs. So the owner fired everybody except for one guy. And the next day I get a telephone call saying, hey, I know you came in looking, but and I know I told you we didn't have anything, but can you start tomorrow? And how many days can you work?
Oh my.
So I immediately went from nothing to 6 days a week working at a downtown Minneapolis nightclub. And then I started making a name for myself as a guy who was really good at what I did, started doing parties out because of that. And then, I just kind of moved up from there. And in fact, I was so good at what I was doing and so committed to the bar that within about a year, they were asking me to take on management, not just managing the DJs, but then managing the restaurant and the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the last year it was open, they asked me to be the general manager. And I really thought that I'd kind of moved past the idea that I might be a professional entertainer, because I still had my father in the back of my head going, it's not going to make any money doing this. You really find a real job. And the real job had presented itself, and it was paying me really well. And in fact, when the bar downtown closed, I was headhunted by the Mall of America. And the Mall of America asked me to come out there and help open the Mall of America and a lot of the bars and nightclubs that were up there. And I helped open, design, and operationally manage and general manager a comedy club. And then I did such a good job there, they asked me to take on a country bar and work for the Gatlin brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in there, I kind of saw my life and was unhappy with the fact that I was going there.
Mm.
And there were lots of I can go into a long story as to why I made the choice that I did, but I chose to quit in a blaze of glory one day, because I looked at my life and went, I may be a good businessman. I may be a good restaurant manager. At the time I was managing over 500 people.
Mm-hmm.
And a huge, huge place that made tons of money. And I walked away from it realizing that I wasn't who I wanted to be. And I hadn't really saved $1, even though I was making a lot of money. I walked away from an obscene amount of money in 1991. And I just decided I was going to start my own thing. And damned if I do, damned if I don't. I'm going to either make a success of this or I'm going to do something else. I got to make this happen. I got to be who I am or I can't. But right now I can't do any of that because I was putting 18 hours a day into understanding this business.
Bill, you know what we're going to do?
With that,
Bill, we're going to put a pause in this.
Yeah.
We're going to do we're going to make this a two-parter if you don't mind, because we're getting into the good parts of the story now. And I don't want to rush everything. We've been telling such a good story. We're going to pick it up after Gatlin's, and if you don't mind, let's do it in another night.
Okay. I told you.
You
were in charge.
I know, and I
slowing my storytelling down.
I wanted the story, and you're giving a wonderful story. And for those of you who are out there, and you don't, there's a lot of things you learned tonight about Bill, and now we're going to get into the parts that I know about. So now we're going to have the dialogue, because we've got the beginning of his DJ company that was out there, then becoming a full-time operator. Then we get into the whole educational things that we were doing, the map DJ things that we were doing. We got a lot of stuff to cover, and I think that's going to be
all of that before I was 28 years old.
You really had
I'm only 29 now. So.
Those early 20s were really productive years for you.
I'm saying.
So thank you guys for being with us. We'll be back at the top of the hour. Dan and MJ and I are going to be talking about club DJing, which is kind of, in this session, or the area of which we're leaving Bill's conversation for tonight. And we'll see either next week or the week after. I'll see what Bill's schedule works out, but you'll see the links and such in the Sunday email. We'll find out what night, and we'll come back and finish up the story of Bill Hermann. So, Bill,
thank you so much, John.
Yeah.
This is you and I have been friends for a really long time, and I mean, I'll tell you later off camera, but tonight has meant a lot to me, just to be able to spend some time with you. So,
yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I've enjoyed our time together, and I don't want to rush because we've got some fun things to talk about. So this will be good, and looking forward to part 2. So everyone, be back. You can go to Facebook.com/JohnYoungMN. The links for the next show are there. And that one should be proper instead of me having issues trying to get it going like we did with this show tonight. So we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks, everybody.